This is Ken Haslam speaking. Last Monday, with the passing of Quentin MacLean, the world lost one of the most outstanding organists of this age. This morning, the regular period of organ music has been extended by 1/2 hour, so that we may, in some measure, pay tribute to one of the most accomplished virtuosos of the king of instruments. Quentin MacLean's console accomplishments were by no means one-sided. He performed on all types of organs and played all manner of music. There are many who remember him well as the organist of Shea's Theatre in Toronto, where his artistry was admired not only by the fans of the mighty Wurlitzer, but by many eminent musicians as well. Quentin MacLean was born in London, England in 1896. Both his father and grandfather had been active in musical circles, his father having been a conductor of prominence in the field of light music. Quentin's musical talents developed early. His first organ recital was given at the age of 13 in Leipzig, where he returned 5 years later as soloist of the Bach Festival. At the age of 20, Quentin could play all of Bach's organ compositions by memory. During this period, he studied the organ with Karl Struve and composition with Max Reger. Being in Germany at the outbreak of World War I, he was interned at Ruhleben for the duration, together with another eminent musician of our time, Sir Ernest Macmillan. After the war, Quentin returned to England, was appointed assistant organist of Westminster Cathedral, and embarked upon a varied career of musical accomplishment. One of the positions he held was that of organist of the Trocadero Cinema in London, where he made many recordings such as this one, You Are My Heart's Delight. A recording by Quentin MacLean on an old 78 RPM record of the 20s. His introduction to the film industry began in 1920, when he went on an English tour as the organist of Lowell Thomas's travelogue with Allenby in Palestine. The following year, he became organist of the Fulham Grand Theatre. His career during the late 20s reads like a directory of London cinemas. He played at the Globe in Acton, the Shepherd's Bush Pavilion, the Regal Marble Arch, and of the Trocadero at the Elephant and Castle. Another recording of the Trocadero period is this medley of music by Edward German. Quentin MacLean was always an experimenter and constantly looked for new fields, one of his latest being jazz piano. An innovation of the Trocadero period was one unique in recording history, that of combining two instruments simultaneously on a single recording. Now, this has become more common today. However, the following recording was made over 30 years ago. In Grieg's Piano Concerto in A minor, we hear a piano and organ duet, both instruments being played by Quentin MacLean. Quentin MacLean, playing both piano and organ in a recording of Grieg's Concerto in A minor. Other recordings of this nature are the Second Hungarian Rhapsody by Liszt and Gershwin's Rhapsody in Blue. Quentin enjoyed the organ and was capable of doing anything he wished at the console. His knowledge of organ tonality was phenomenal. He knew every part of the organ, how the pipes were constructed and voiced, and his sense of tonal registration was founded on a thorough understanding of the capabilities of the instrument. Here is part of a medley which he called A Parade of Parades, in which he enjoys some rare good fun. The second selection, the Mosquitoes Parade, illustrates his ingenuity and sense of humor. Before we leave Quentin's days of the English cinema, where he was known as the king of organists, we would like to play another example of his console artistry. Here, he is at the Christie unit organ of the Regal Marble Arch, and a whirlwind rendition of the Toccata from Charles Widor's Fifth Symphony. The theme in the pedal makes use of the 32-foot diaphone stop, the bass response of which is well recorded for a 78 RPM disc of about 30 years ago. In continuing this tribute to Quentin MacLean, we come now to the year 1939, when we find him in Canada beginning a new aspect of his career. He appeared at Shea's Theatre as soloist from that time until the theatre was demolished, during which period he became well known as a broadcasting artist. His association with J. Frank Willis began soon after his arrival, and he was heard constantly for 23 years as the organist of the CBC program Nocturne. How often have we heard him play this familiar music?
gentlemen, Nocturne, a program of words and music woven for your listening by Quentin MacLean and J. Frank Willis, an interlude of harmony and verse for the hour when the day is done and we can rest quiet-handed ere the night. Nocturne.
As music builds a bright, impermanent tower high in the sunlight, wild with birds and banners, so this chosen hour will take you. So these chiming words will wake you briefly from the world. Until the windy flags are furled, the last page turned, the music ended. Wander well attended through the gate and climb the stairs. At the top, look down and see my broad enchanted land, where south is love, and death lies north, and oceans on either hand.
And so it went week after week, year after year, creating moods suitable to any subject and performing with ease hundreds of compositions of all natures. His memory was phenomenal. He could on the moment recall music that he hadn't heard or played for years. On one occasion, Frank Willis thought the music used in the road show of the original version of Quo Vadis would be appropriate for a background. Quentin sat down at the organ and, after a minute, played it straight through as if it had been written the day before. He admitted later that he hadn't heard it for 30 years. Another CBC program of respectable duration is Bod's Scrapbook, on which he performed weekly for 15 years. Both these programs required an extensive knowledge of background music and a fine sense of timing. Quentin had both, together with a mastery of harmonic progression and the versatility required to combine all three. His sense of timing was such that he could be relied upon to bring anything he was playing to a successful conclusion at any specified time. Although he used only a Hammond electronic instrument for the scrapbook, its limitations did not prevent him from eliciting some enjoyable and humorous moments from it. Here's a scrapbook excerpt of 10 years ago called Show Tunes. So far, we have dealt with the lighter side of Quentin MacLean's organ playing, but his classical repertoire was equally extensive. Here is a recent recording of Purcell's Trumpet, Tune, and Air, made at the Church of the Holy Rosary, where he was organist for 20 years, and where the organ was built to his own design and specifications. Trumpet, Tune, and Air by Purcell, played on the organ of Holy Rosary Church, Toronto. Virtuosity of performance and versatility of mood was only the beginning of Quentin MacLean's musicianship. He was also a composer of some stature in many forms of music. His concerto for organ and orchestra was performed in England in 1935, and various other compositions have been heard on the CBC over the years. His theme and variations for harpsichord and orchestra shows imagination and inventiveness. He had recently composed a concerto for violin and orchestra for concert violinist Albert Pratz, and had also a concerto for novacord and a concerto for piano and orchestra to his credit. There were also pieces for orchestra such as Algonquin Legend and others, which have been played by the Toronto Symphony Orchestra. Other compositions include scores for solo harp, string quartet, a trio for piano, violin, and cello, and much other incidental music. In the field of church music, there are masses, many of which have been used in divine service, a Stabat Mater for tenor voice and chorus, and various compositions inspired by the liturgy of the church for use at various times in the church calendar. The following piece was incorporated in a recital of music which he gave only a short time ago. It is his own setting of the antiphon of the Blessed Virgin, Regina Caeli, Rejoice, O Queen of Heaven.
Regina Caeli, a setting of the antiphon of the Blessed Virgin, composed by Quentin MacLean and played by him on the organ of Holy Rosary Church. A frequent contributor to organ periodicals, he was a writer of articles and technical briefs. He had just completed a textbook, Organ, Tone, and Terminology, which is being published and will soon be available. In this publication, he approaches the question of organ tonality from a new aspect, and the book will be of invaluable assistance to students of the organ. In concluding this tribute to a great musician, we would like to play a composition recently recorded by him and composed by the eminent German composer Max Reger, with whom Quentin MacLean studied for some time. Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domine. Blessed is he that cometh in the name of the Lord.
Benedictus by Max Reger. Quentin MacLean was a man of spiritual perception and religious sensitivity. His devout nature is shown by the music he composed for the church. It was natural that he should have chosen the organ as his means of expression, for among the many musical instruments created by man, none can compare in majesty and nobility with the pipe organ, which has long been dedicated to the service of the church and the glory of God.